welcome to Debunked, where we discuss healthcare news with a healthy dose of skepticism and highlight bad industry practices. I am Arundhati Parmar, editor-in-chief of MedCity News, a publication that highlights innovation in healthcare.
And I'm Samir Batra. I'm the managing partner of HIP. We're an early-stage venture firm.
Well, Samir, there was spring break. I'm sure you went somewhere. Where did you go?
Bahamas.
Oh, good for you. Well, I went a little bit on the drier side of life. I went to Arizona, but it is so beautiful out there. I really enjoyed myself there. Went to Flagstaff, went to the Grand Canyon. That was the day of the partial eclipse.
Oh, nice.
So I donned my sunglasses and everything. It was really cool. Even though it was partial over there, it was a clear sky. And it was just so cool to see the blackness of the sun, blackness of the moon gobble up the orange sun. And the glass, how dark they are. You can only see the sun and that's it. And it was bright orange and then this black over it.
That's pretty cool.
It was really, really cool. Yeah. And then we went to Sedona and we went to Phoenix. It was crazy because it was like 35-degree weather in Grand Canyon.
It's warmer as you go south.
Warmer. It was like almost 90 degrees in Phoenix. So you're packing for all this in the same trip. But I gotta tell you, as beautiful as Arizona was, and I love Sedona in particular, I don't think I'd ever want to live there.
Oh boy, I think I know where this is going to go. This is going to be a bumpy ride, isn't it? Unintended?
Bumpy ride, but you're unintended.
Yeah.
So I was actually in the state of Arizona when the state Supreme Court dropped the bombshell that an 1864 law that amounts to a near total abortion ban in the state is enforceable. And, obviously the Democrats came back in the state and tried to make something less draconian. But no luck. The 1.6 million women in the state have to deal with what they've been dealt by a panel of judges, mostly male.
So if this thing stays in place, they would join, 14 other states that have total abortion? And even on top of that, no exceptions for other conditions?
Certain states, you're right, certain states do not have exceptions for rape and incest, but some states do. They are in the minority, I would say, but they're not one or two. There are quite a few states that do not have that exception.
There are, but what's interesting to me too is when we were looking at this, right around this time or before, somewhere around there was a survey done in Arizona too. Right?
Okay.
So then 59% of people said that they would actually approve some version of an abortion. So this is their constituents.
Yep.
And then 27% said except for rape, incest, and violence. And I think only 9% were all right saying that abortion is illegal. So it's that's what your people are saying.
I think, we have to look at it two ways. I think in general, people value life. You may be pro-choice, but you still value life.
Of course.
But I think, we're getting ahead of those discussions. I think the knee-jerk reaction was, oh my God, it's 2024 and we're going to look at 1864.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm a woman and this is an affront to women's rights. And I think those are legitimate arguments, but I don't think they advance the conversation. So let's say, for argument's sake, I agree with a lot of conservatives and say that the life or the sanctity of life of the unborn child, fetus, whatever you call it, is paramount, as equal as it is to the sanctity of life of the mother, of the person birthing that child. Let's say I admit to that. So then I should be trying my very best to promote safe sex and promote protected sex and promote birth control, because I do not want any unwanted pregnancies, right? So before I get to that, let's talk about who actually gets an abortion. So I'm going to look, I have my cheat sheet here. So I'm going to look at exactly who gets abortion in the United States. Now, these numbers are from 2021.
Yeah.
Now, majority of the women who get abortions, 57%, are actually women in their 20s. 8% are teenagers. And 42 of abortion recipients are Black. So it's largely low income, women in their 20s, and minorities. Okay? So let's start with the low-hanging fruit for lack of a better term, the 8% of teenagers.
Yeah.
I mean, why aren't we blanketing them with, education on how risky and stressful an unwanted pregnancy can be to both the woman and, to both the, young teenage boy and the young teenage girl? Let's educate them. Let's provide birth control in schools, in community settings, wherever kids hang out. And then let's provide the same types of resources to, low-income women and people of color.
Conservatives will still oppose that, won't they? Taxes towards education now for safe sex?
Well, there has been an evolution, and that is precisely because we live in a post-Roe world. Certain Republican, state leaders are basically now talking about these resources, which were typically a Democratic talking point.
Yeah.
So what has happened, especially, for example, the state of Oklahoma, there is a state senator there, I believe her name is Jessica Garvin, and she has championed 2 birth control bills.
Yeah.
One is to allow pharmacies to dispense hormonal contraceptives without a prescription, and the second that clarifies that yes, there might be abortion in the state of Oklahoma. Yes, there might be an abortion ban in the state of Oklahoma. However, that doesn't mean that you have restricted access to contraceptive surgeries like, tubal ligation and stuff like that. Her talking point, and I think that makes a lot of sense, is let's make sure that we're supporting, life and not just being pro-birth, right?
Right.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, let's eliminate the need for abortions as much as we can.
I mean, that makes sense. But I think, again, unwanted pregnancies is what you're talking about, right? I still don't understand how some states have bans against, like, just total outright, like, it doesn't matter if it was resulting from, from rape or incest or sexual abuse. So how do you sort of balance that out?
I mean, look, it's not easy, right? Obviously, rape and incest are horrific things. But even beyond that, there is the health of the mother, that many states are not taking into consideration. There's ectopic pregnancies. The story that really, really bothered me was this Texas woman who had IVF, who basically used IVF to basically get pregnant twice. The second time around, when she's pregnant at 12 weeks, she gets this horrendous diagnosis that the baby, the fetus in her body, all the organs are developing outside the body, including the heart. Now, she can't get an abortion, in Texas.
Right.
She sees that even in nearby states, she can't really go because there are people protesting outside abortion clinics.
Sure, yeah.
So she decides that I'm going to go from Texas to Colorado. Not New Mexico, not any place nearby, but to Colorado.
Right, yeah.
Because you know what? As traumatic as it is for her to walk into an abortion clinic, at least there'll be no protesters trying to make her feel even worse.
Yeah.
So the trauma of the physical pain of having to do this, and then the mental pain that she wanted a child and cannot, and then having to travel so far away when she's not getting care from her own trusted physicians. It makes me angry. I have to tell you, as a woman, it does make me feel a little bit angry.
100%. I mean, I think this topic, this really important topic, timing-wise, it's really interesting, right? To happen in 2024 while it's an election year. So
yes.
Is this going to be a hot topic again
in
November?
I think in a post-Roe world, we have already seen in 2022 Republicans paying a heavy price. And I feel like we are at an inflection point in these debates. And I feel like Democrats are really, really going to hammer this issue in 2024. And I believe there might be a reckoning of some sort. Because, I mean, can you really have a patchwork of laws where women have different statuses in different states?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like bigamy is okay in one state, but it's not okay in any other state. I mean, it's,
We are the United States of America.
We are the United States of America.
Maybe not so united.
Well, I mean, it's a federal system where the power of the states are important. The ability of states to to, chart their own destiny is important. But I don't know. On this issue, I feel we've opened a hornet's nest.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Epic battle coming up.
Epic battle coming up for sure.
Speaking of which.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
So I guess, yeah, big bad Epic is in the news again.
Big bad Epic. I don't know, but you tell me about this particular one. I don't know much about it. So first talk about what that battle is with our famed EHR vendor.
Yeah,
and
so let's
company.
break it down. Okay, so my big question always is, if you're talking about Epic, who's trying to mess with Judy? You don't mess with Judy. Come on, she don't play. You know that.
She's a very impressive lady. She's no nonsense. Definitely.
She's no nonsense, right? So it's interesting. I just sort of a personal point to this, right?
Okay.
Like when Epic came out and started, making waves, right, back in the day, there was other big players in front of them, and so I would say the other ones were the big bullies.
And they were the underdogs.
They're the underdogs. Now it seems like sometimes it's Epic that is in the sort of the bully seat.
You're bearing the lead. What's the news?
Well, I mean, it's the whole point. Like, so what ended up happening really, recently, right? About a few weeks ago, Epic basically cut off some data requests from a company called Particle Health. Right? So Particle Health, if people know, they're sort of like a Redox and Health Gorilla and all these sorts of companies that sort of are intermediaries, right, for data. So their Epic and Particle Health are part of this health information exchange called Care Quality. So, but when there's a request that came in from Particle Health's customers, it goes through the health exchange, and of course, Epic controls so much of this data flow, right, from the provider side. They basically blocked and cut off a bunch of data requests.
Why?
Right? Well, they're basically saying that it's potentially inappropriate use of data, right? So inappropriate use, because the idea for the health exchange is, now just to kind of give you guys backgrounds on Care Quality, I think it's 600,000 providers, 50,000 clinics, 4,200 hospitals. I think on a monthly basis, 400 million clinical documents exchange in this platform. So it's
through Care Quality.
Through Care Quality.
Okay.
Care Quality is a conglomerate made up of all these different companies, right? Like Epic's in it, Particle Health.
So is it an HIE or no?
It is. It's a health information exchange,
okay.
right? It's a health information exchange with all these guys in it. But so Epic decided, well, you know what? No, this request deems to be not appropriate, and it's in violation of HIPAA, and so we're going to go ahead and block it.
Okay.
And Particle's sitting there going, what are you talking about? Like, this request is made for treatment of care.
Okay.
So it really opens up a lot of can of worms here, right?
Okay.
Let's start with the framework first, okay? So there's all these companies in this sort of care quality ecosystem, right?
Okay.
Epic's one, Particle Health, others are in there. So I equate this, let me see. This is like inmates in a jail running their own institution.
Oh my goodness.
Right? Okay. How can you police yourself? So this is what they're doing. They set this thing up and they're policing themselves. So then, Particle sits there and says, no, you're wrong. And Epic says, no, I'm right and you're wrong. Well, who's going to police them?
So there's no enforcing or governing mechanism.
They're enforcing and governing themselves.
Okay.
That's, first of all, that's like, there's an issue there.
Right.
I don't know. To me, there is.
Okay.
So, and then the other piece is, okay, so if you take a look at Epic's claim, okay, so this is inappropriate use of patient data, and basically the whole usage data is supposed to be around treatment of care, right? So patients' treatment of care. They're claiming it's not. They're claiming it is. Who wrote the definition?
Right.
Right. So who wrote the definition? Who's tracking the definition? Basically, my question is, who's policing you? What are the rules? If there's a violation, what happens? Is there a voting? Can anybody just call out anybody? I mean, right now it seems like anybody just can call out anybody, like Epic called out Particle. Now, it's interesting is Particle's other customers' data flow has not been impacted. It's a couple of these customers that they had.
And these customers, we don't know who these customers are,
digital health companies, probably,
Okay,
right? So I think these were digital health companies that were sort of doing, the data exchange, right?
With the health system.
With the health system, and obviously Epic sitting in the middle as the gatekeeper, right? And sort of, so this whole situation went down. But I think it really goes down to the true definitions of what treatment of care are for data use. It's also the governing behind it. It's the liability behind it. I think there's, I read an article, Brandon Kessler, somebody who's sort of been in this space for a while, like with Zeus Health, and he's been at Redox and stuff. And so I actually agree with Brandon. I know Brandon, nice guy.
Okay.
And he said, look, you know what? There's got to be transparency here. There's got to be transparency in terms of, A, what the definition is, how are you guys policing each other? And he made a really important point, which I totally agree with. Where's the audit trail, right? So you're going to use the data. You got to leave the breadcrumbs behind you. In case something like this happens, what are you going to do? Now, why this is a big issue, you remember last time we talked about cybersecurity.
Yes, we did.
So, I mean, if you have data breaches where data is being used and HIPAA is being violated, this could open up a can of worms.
Okay.
So I think this is a big issue that needs to be talked about. But I just love it that, Epic's at the forefront of it again.
So I'm a little curious about why you're calling Epic a bully. I mean, what do they gain, honestly, what do they gain by blocking these data requests? What do they gain?
Well, I think they're just taking the moral and ethical high ground and saying, hey, you know what, we're protecting our providers. We're protecting the sanctity and the identity of these patients and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
I'm joking, right? I'm not like, they're bullying in a different sense. This is the
okay, so as long as they're bullying in an ethical way, you're okay with it? Is that what you're saying?
It's still a bully. A bully is a bully. It don't matter if you're doing it like it's legal or not legal. You're still bullying. My bigger problem with them calling it out, I'm not mad at Particle Health or I'm not mad at Epic. I'm just saying it's like you guys took to news. This became news because it's like you two can't figure out your crap. And you took it to the air, and we all found out. And then it's like, oh, really? Well, let's go find out what happened here. Oh, there's like, this is a jail with prisoners, and they're running the whole damn show themselves.
Okay.
There's no policing of this framework. That's my bigger problem, right? You have all these millions of records exchanging hands. And if there is, then maybe I haven't read it in the public record. Like, I haven't read it. Like, right now what I'm seeing is, oh, yeah, we have these frameworks. We agree to these rules. But then how is Epic being able to care? Why is Care Quality not calling out Particle or these clients of Particle? Why is Epic stepping up and doing it?
Because Epic is facilitating the data exchange, at least that's how I see it. So they are seeing.
But that's my bully comment. They're the big bad wolf in the room.
Well, then I think you're saying that, not that I'm a huge defender of Epic or anything, but it's just they have acquired market share. Hospitals have bought into there, and so that's why they are the heavyweights. And so they're saying, I just wish I had more information about exactly what went down, and I'm not sure that I've read enough, and you guys can write to me and tell me that I'm totally clueless. I don't even know who the health systems are, what the requests were.
We don't know either. Right? We don't either. All we know is that some of the data requests, according to Epic, were not treatment of care patient requests.
Okay.
And so I think there's a debate behind that, right? Where Particle saying, yes, it is, and Epic saying, no, it isn't.
Okay, and then let me take it a step further. Let's say it's not treatment related. Is Epic then saying that
you
Particle...
can't do it.
Because it's PHI.
Because, exactly, and that's the framework that they've created.
Okay.
Right? So my question is it he said, she said, she said, he said? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's now being aired out, and then it just brings up the bigger issue that who is policing this framework? Where's the audit? Where's the transparency? Where are the definitions behind these rules?
Okay.
Right? So I'm just highlighting that fact.
Okay.
Like, hey, guys, that's the thing we need to focus on.
So who should be policing?
Hey, I came up with the CSA last time, but I'm not going to go there again. No, I mean, I think there's something got to be, either this group can police it, but I think it just shows that maybe these things were not figured out before it was implemented. Or if it was implemented, it's like, it's not being effectively managed. Like somebody's not stepping up.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and this thing is still going to play out. Like, it's still going to play out. So we're still going to get more information about what happened.
And we might see more of this in the future, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, yeah.
100%. I mean, look, we're talking about the exchange of so much data happening now, right? With open APIs and all this, FHIR and all these calls that are happening on data. And, from a movement perspective, we want digital health companies to create these solutions, right? Because we understand in the long term, it's more cost effective. Well, they need data to do their work. So like, what's going to happen there? How are you, at the same time in protecting PHI, how do you still give advancement and give access to data to have innovation happen, right? So it's a big issue to talk about.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, there are, certain health systems that are not even working with certain kinds of digital health systems because they don't want to,
Yep.
share their patient information for these new products to be developed. So
yeah, but I'll tell you, health information exchange platforms are launching left and right.
yeah,
We've looked at them from an investment perspective, and
Okay.
so they're coming, and they're also, some of these are also coming where they're actually giving health systems a financial incentive to help share data or faster share data and identify patients for clinical trials, right? For different studies, and so in that manner, there's a financial upside and incentive, right, for these health systems. So this stuff is not going to go away. It's big data, but it's also big money.
interesting.
So-
Yeah. Well, you mentioned hospitals and big money.
Yeah.
So that's our segue into our next and
Yeah.
last piece of news and analysis we're going to do today, and that is the Kaufman Hall Hospital M&A report of
Yeah.
2024.
Yeah.
So it looks like we did better question is if it's better or
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
So there are more hospital M&A that happened in the first quarter of 2024
Yeah.
than in the last 3 years. The last record was, I think, 2020.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's something to cheer. I feel like all the analysis that I've read so far of this report was they focused on the fact that basically smaller hospitals can't make it, so they have to
Right.
merge with larger entities to have a shred of
Right.
financial stability. Is
Yeah.
that your sense too?
Yes and no. I mean, I think, look, I've been in healthcare for 20 plus years. I've seen this happen, more times than not, right? Like you go into different communities and you'll see, a standalone community hospital. Like it's hard to survive,
Right.
It's hard to compete. So I think to me, it wasn't as surprising. Like I'm like, okay, but you also need to look at some of the news that we've had or we reported, right? Some of the things that have sort of popped up, like Risant Health, right? Like the whole formation of Kaiser's Group to go buy Geisinger, right? You had General Catalyst, Suma. Remember what I talked to you about at that time? I
Yes.
said, look, there's going to be copycats. Look what's happening. There's more M&A activity. So we're not predicting the future here, but I mean, like we kind of like this. It was kind of happening.
We're
right?
smartly predicting.
We're smartly
the future.
predicting. But look, post-pandemic, companies have been, hospitals have been suffering financially, right? So financial dependence. They thought that it was going to have the recovery was going to be faster and better. Well, the other problem that's happened is, look, man, we can't kick that inflation bucket.
Right.
Right? What happened again now? Right? Remember, I said 1 cut. Feds keep talking about 3 cuts.
Yeah.
So if inflation is not getting corrected, those hospitals that are holding on by a thinnest of margins, they can't compete. So I think there's a lot of wins focusing on the same direction, causing some of this higher activity.
Right.
And I think the report said this too, that I think it's going to continue,
Yeah.
right, for the short term. So there's other reasons too. There's market share, right? Market share gain and access. Look at the Atrium and Advocate move, right?
Yes.
Like you certainly had this carve out that happened from like Chicago down to the Carolinas.
That's right.
Right? You had the William Beaumont and Spectrum Health merger. You had Gunderson Bellin merging in Wisconsin. So you have, I think the thing that we're seeing that we haven't seen in some time is big players getting together as well.
Later stage acquisitions.
Later stage, right? Kaiser and Geisinger are big brands. Gunderson Bellin, big brands. William Beaumont, Spectrum, big brands. So I think you'll continue to see that. I hate to say this, but the days of the small-ish community freestanding hospital has been over for a long time, but I think we're finally going to see the nail in the coffin soon enough.
Oh my God, I can't imagine what it would be for people living in those areas, right?
I mean, it's true, and I think unless you have some meaningful ability to stand out, and I'm not talking about the pediatric hospitals or MD Andersons and HSSs over the world, but it's really hard. Like even in our backyard, you have El Camino Health. It's amazing how El Camino has been able to stay El Camino.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing. But I think in other regional areas, it's really difficult. I mean, bottom line is that as a standalone hospital, just simply enough, it is really hard to compete on cost. Okay?
Right.
So I helped a physician back in the day, helped build a specialty hospital in Dallas. This place was beautiful. And I had the fortune of being with him and designing a lot of the tech that went in. Oh, it was great. It was like going to it was going shopping for me, right? But guess what? They couldn't sustain it, and they ended up having to exit to one of the big players in the Dallas market.
Okay.
They had a great patient experience, but eventually, after the newness faded away a couple years later, they couldn't compete on price.
Yeah.
They couldn't compete on contracts and on cost.
Yeah.
And guess what happened? They had to give in. They had to give in, right? So I think it's hard in this country to be able to sustain that.
So I'm curious about FTC's role in this because, they look at mergers and acquisitions quite closely, but looks like given that the trend has been up in this first quarter, then that means that they're not looking at it that closely, or you think it's because there are more cross-market mergers are happening, so the immediate price issue,
There is more cross-market stuff happening, right?
And maybe that's happening because FTC would block otherwise,
well,
right?
it's not happening in the same town, right? It's like I'm not going to go buy a competitor across the street. I'm
Right.
going to go across the state and go to the other state.
Yep.
But I think that's going to happen too. I think
Yeah.
there's going to be more scrutiny. I mean, you saw what's happening in California, right? Like with the whole M&A, like we talked about in our previous episode. So
The review, yes.
the review and stuff. So it ain't happening in California. It's happening outside.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think I think it's going to continue to happen. I hate to say it, the longer the market takes to recover from this sort of inflation issue that we're having, you're going to have some other organizations who are holding on by a thread. They're not going to be able to. And even the big guys like Tenet, Tenet let go of a couple of hospitals that like Novant acquired recently. So that stuff is always going to happen.
Going to happen, yeah.
They're always going to keep it up a little bit. HCA, Tenet, the for-profit guys are always in the market. They're always buying and selling.
Of course,
providers,
of course.
So.
And I said the last thing, but here's the actual last thing that we're going to talk about.
Well, I'm not prepared for that. What's that?
I'm springing it on you because I just read it before we started recording. FTC has now come out with a rule. It's not going to be enforced immediately in 120 days, and most likely it's going to be challenged. You cannot add non-compete clauses to your employment contracts in America.
I mean, welcome to the rest of the country, non-Californians.
True.
We've been living like that for the longest time.
I know.
Right?
We have.
This is how you are able to get people who work at the big companies and go start small companies themselves.
Right.
So, congratulations, the rest of America, waking up to the fact that you can't do that.
As long as Chamber of Commerce and other places do not sue.
I will strongly support this rule. Not that it matters.
On that note, thank you so much for watching. And please write to us at debunked@medcitynews.com and like and subscribe our YouTube channel, Debunked.
All right. Thank you, guys.